just waiting a couple of minutes, but it's so good that everyone is here again and taking a look and starting this new journey of this new cycle. Where actually we're gonna have a chance to talk a little bit more about the importance and some tools about self-development and how key this is part of this whole journey that we are having at this moment. One thing that I would like to ask you from now on, like if you, every time we start in the meeting, I'll always gonna try to remember, just put the letters of your best language that you would like to be talking during the meeting in sessions in pairs. So for example, if you'd rather speak Spanish or in Portuguese or in English, just put ES. Okay, just a second. And can you help me with that in the chat? PT for Portuguese in front of your name. ES for Spanish. And let me see, PT for Portuguese, ES for Spanish, and AN. Is that the best for English? Hi, Mila, how are you? Good to see you. All right, PT, English. Josefa would rather to speak Portuguese or in our inner journey. Let me share a little bit about the importance of the language, especially today. We're having a journey in pairs for the exercise. And when I had experience of testing in myself, the workshop we're having tonight, I found out when I try to talk about my inner journey, how hard it is to be spoken in a different language than my mother tongue. So we're having the invitation today, since we're gonna have the chance to be talking with people from different countries, but they do speak same languages. If we had a chance and if you're more comfortable in that situation, we're gonna try to pair you up with people who speaks your mother tongue as well. So if you could do and write, it would be wonderful. Lina, would you rather Spanish or English? Good that you're here.
Hi, yeah, in Spanish.
Okay, wonderful. Josefa, would you like which language? Then I can help you here. Portuguese? Okay. Maria Paula, would you like to speak English or Spanish?
Español, sí.
Español, okay. Perfect. So today, is it okay if we start, Robert? Okay. So thank you so much for coming today for our cycle 2, the self-development and the inner work that we're going to have today in our learning journey from TWCF and Pro-Social World in Latin America. Today, we would like to start with a check-in where we're going to share our question to just have the opportunity to say a little bit and get introduced to someone who's going to be partnering with you during this whole journey today, tonight, this afternoon, this morning. So I'm going to put the question in the chat. And then we're going to separate in breakout rooms for a couple of minutes. We're going to have around 8 minutes. And then we're going to get back on this main plenary. But for today, what is really important is actually to say a little bit about yourself as individual, more than as your organization, but talking, introducing yourself. And we have a question to start this conversation that we would like to share with you. It's going to be on the chat. So, em português, o que tem me inspirado nos últimos dias que eu gostaria de compartilhar. In Spanish, que me ha inspirado en los últimos días que me gustaría compartir. In English, what has inspired me over the last few days that I would like to share with you. So at this moment, we have a moment to talk about a little bit about this experience. And also if you would like to say something about yourself to the partner you're gonna be pairing up during this journey, you're more than welcome. We're gonna have 8 minutes. And just let me check if the breakout rooms, Anna, is it okay? The breakout rooms are all set. Same languages? Yes? Okay. So the partners you're gonna have at this moment, we're gonna be whole journey we're gonna have tonight or this event. You're gonna get the chance to meet someone amazing, as I had a chance to meet. In a couple of minutes, we're gonna be back. We're gonna be back in 8 minutes. Okay. All right. See you in a few minutes. So Robert, with you now.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, and greetings, everybody. I'm not going to take up a lot of it.
Okay, there we go. It's a real delight to be here with you all today. I'm so excited about this particular program that you're all involved in. For me, it's one of the jewels in the crown. It's one of the highlights of what the work that we're doing in ProSocial. So ProSocial World is a company, well, it's a not-for-profit organization. It's actually a 501c3 incorporated in Texas, in Austin, in Texas. And I'll share with you my screen. It is dedicated to consciously, oh, there we go, right. All the little pieces I need to get set up just to get my screens all sorted and everything. Hopefully I'm good now. Dedicated to consciously evolving a world that works for all. That's our mission statement. By supporting, we're doing a few different things, but one thing we're doing is definitely seeking to build a community of facilitators and others, and you're entering that community if you want to. We're obviously fostering research on all the factors that influence trust and collaboration. We're not just limited to the core design principles of Ostrom. We're really exploring everything that contributes to greater trust and collaboration in society. And we're also offering training in various sort of different approaches and models in different contexts. And for this one, obviously, we're working in the context of Latin America, but we've also running things for business and for intentional communities and all sorts of spaces. So a little bit about what ProSocial is as a model. I like to think of it as based on a foundation of the idea of evolution, and not just genetic evolution, but cultural evolution. And the basics of cultural evolution, variation and selection and retention, that's what evolution is all about. So in this case, it's about variation, selection and retention of behaviours that we're trying to create. And what particularly types of behaviours are we focused on? We're focused on an idea of the commons, the idea of small localized groups coming together to share or manage a resource or a purpose, and to create agreements amongst themselves that work well in their local context. And then obviously also using Ostrom's work and particular ideas of what she called polycentric governance, to then bring those small groups together to create whole systems that combine the qualities of self-determination and equity and effectiveness. So it's all about partnering, not domination, at multiple levels. That's kind of our vision. And the how of this is really about building both, well, part of the how is about agreements, the agreements that we create to build the commons. But in order to execute on those agreements, in order to implement them, we're convinced that we need to do work on the inner aspects of how we understand our world, how we make sense of our world, to help shift people. This is really how you can think about psychological flexibility, is shifting people from being in fight, flight, or react mode into a more consciously chosen set of responses that's in line with what really matters to us. And the why, as I mentioned, is a world that works for all in broad terms. So one way you can talk about the aim of prosocial is to balance and integrate interests. Interests is a word that you could say values or passions or needs, or, you know, it's a general term, goals, but to balance and integrate interests across levels, individuals, groups, and groups of groups. And in this session today, what we're going to be doing is practicing sensing and responding more deeply to parts of ourselves that we bring to a situation. So we're kind of integrating ourselves, creating a more balanced and integrated community of the different parts of ourselves, if that makes sense to you. And we're also going to be doing pair sharing in a particular way with really careful listening. And so that pair sharing will be allowing you to practice sensing and responding to one another. So we're really dealing with the level of the personal and the interpersonal in this session. Lovely. One idea that I want to invite you to consider is that in every moment, like even if you think about it in this moment, just pay attention to what you're sensing. Part of you is sensing me speaking, the image on the screen, whatever else is in your environment. But there's also a part of you that's sensing your inner monologue, your inner experience. And you can switch attention between those two. You could be noticing, oh, this is interesting, or this is, I've got all these other things on my mind, whatever it is you could be noticing. So just letting yourself pause for a moment and see if you can just feel into inside and outside. Just give you a moment. If you like, you could close your eyes. Just feel that there's a sense of, I can sense the outside, the touch of the clothing on the skin and the air on my skin. But there's also thinking and inner sensing, which goes beyond thinking. It might be imagery, it might be bodily sensations. And just give yourself a moment to notice how you as an observer can move between those two things, sensing the outer and sensing the inner. Thank you. And then, of course, you're not just sensing, you're also responding to those two streams of experience. We're often caught up in our automatic responding to people around us or our environment, and we're not really noticing our own inner responding, if you like. But we might find ourselves saying, this is not going so well, you know, you're getting into a cycle around the inner voice as well. So I want you to just have a sense of that being in two worlds at the same time, that there's a world of direct experience, which we can perceive to some extent, and then there's our inner meaning making, if you like, that we are continually responding to. And so the way I think about conscious evolution. I said earlier that our mission is to consciously evolve a world that works for all. And I think the core of that is that our sensing can be more inclusive and more balanced, broader perspective taking, rather than narrow focus on what I want. It could be about focusing on what others want as well, or other parts of myself might want. And then our responding can be more conscious and less reactive. It can be more deliberately chosen, or at least aligned with our stated values and goals. And the tool that we're going to be using in this session is going to really help you in that respect, in both of those ways. Just if you're familiar with the pro-social process, if you've read our book or done any work in acceptance and commitment therapy before, you'll know that one of the inspirations for this tool is acceptance and commitment training. And in that space, it's called the ACT Matrix. But we're actually going to be doing a special version of it today that Robert and I have been working on, which also draws upon Robert Keegan's work on immunity to change and competing commitments. So just so you know where the heritage of this tool is from. And the conversation that we're going to engage in will have a kind of rhythm. There'll be a sequence of questions we'll be asking you throughout the rest of the session. And I'm going to ask the question, and then I'll give you some examples of Michelle and Robert will share with you. I've done this process with both of them, and they're going to share with you the examples that they filled in. And then there'll be some personal reflection time for you to come up with your own responses. I'll invite you to pair share, and then we'll probably have some opportunity to share in a larger group, and then we'll move on to the next question. That's our rhythm, and we'll just do that again and again for 6 questions. But I did want to make sure that I give you an opportunity for informed consent, so you know what you're getting into and you can choose how you respond. So I said we're going to be inviting you to share in pairs, and we will invite you to reflectively listen to one another, to practice reflective listening. And obviously, the more open you're able to be, the more likely it is that you'll gain new insights, but it's entirely up to you what you share. And so before we go into this exercise, I'm going to be inviting you to think about the issue that you would like to work on. And, you know, please choose an issue that you are going to feel okay about sharing a little bit about it with someone else. Okay, I can't see that many faces on the screen, but does anyone object? I'm going to assume that that's okay, unless there's any problems. We're all okay. Got a thumbs up from Terry. Thanks, Terry.
We can ask everyone, Paul. Is everyone okay? If everyone is okay, so we can have this. Okay. If you have any questions or any doubts, just make a question like that with a thumbs. Okay. So generally, most of people are okay. Thank you.
And you can use the reaction buttons too if you need to for that kind of thing. But thanks very much. So here we are. Now, some of you may have had a chance to print this out. Some may not. Robert, could you share could we share this picture? Whoever, it's probably not Robert, but could you share this picture again in the chat if people would like to print it out? Now, I know printers are very old school, and many of you won't have printers anymore, and that's fine. So for the purposes of this exercise, it's perfectly fine just to grab a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, and if you can draw a basically leave a bit of space up the top and draw 6 boxes. That will be adequate. So I'll just show you what I mean. You do something like that. No, that's all blurry. Anyway, it's basically just a space up the top and 6 boxes underneath. Something like what you've got on that screen. So I'm going to just check in. Does anyone need a bit more time to get organised with your piece of paper? I think that's a yes from Maria Paula.
Yeah, Maria
So-
Paula just asked a couple of minutes, but
Yeah. So while Maria Paula is getting organised, and we'll give you a few minutes just to come into this question, we're going to be inviting you to work on something throughout the course of this program together. So it's not just today. This is going to be something that we revisit from time to time. And the question that I'm inviting you to consider first is, if there's one thing that you could get better at that would improve the quality of your relationships with others, what would that be? Now, there's a couple of ways into this. In your reflection time, which I'll give you in just a moment, you can just answer that question, you know, whatever it shows up for you. But you might also enjoy thinking about 2 or 3 people that know you really well and care about you. What would they say? This is not people that are critical of you. This is people that care for your well-being. What 2 or 3 things, sorry, what one thing would they say to you you might get better at that would improve the quality of your relationships with others? So I'll give you a few moments to contemplate that, and I'll just give you a sense of some of the types of responses. It's going to go up in the top here. Actually, maybe we'll wait. I think this question probably doesn't need examples. And we can talk about Michelle and Robert's examples later. So just give you a few moments to come into an awareness of that question. So Michelle, I'm going to invite you to maybe speak to your response when I asked you this question. Could you say a little bit about what you were decided you'd like to work on?
yeah, when we had that experience, Paul, I had something that I've been working in a couple of years actually to follow better my intuition and practice surrendering each process, respecting and reducing my controlling and also my sense of having to know everything and have done in times established. At the same time, I was feeling like I need to reduce and would like to feel a little bit more the present moment. In a way I can get in peace and track in every single project or moment of my life.
Thank you. And Robert, would you like to share a little bit about what your piece was?
Yeah, very happy. When Paul and I were going through this on Monday, the thing that came to my mind was it's actually important to me is actually staying present to someone else, you know, in those moments when what's important to me is actually being questioned or overlooked by others. I don't know whether others have that experience, but when when what's important to me is being overlooked or being questioned seriously, there's kind of this arising in me, you know, and I tend to become a bit assertive. And so what I'm striving to do is just stay calm, you know, and peaceful, and try and exercise humility, try and just really listen to the other person, even though what's important to me might be challenged.
Thank you. And for me, when I was doing it with myself, this process, because we're playing around with this and I always try things, for me, it was about saying no to projects that weren't really aligned with what matters to me, or what matters to the people that I'm closest to. So very different sets of responses. And now I'm going to invite you now to put in a response in this what we're going to call the first quadrant down here. There's like 4 boxes here that are the main part of the matrix. I should just explain to you, this tool is set up in such a way that this is our reflection on 2 main dimensions of ourselves: the pieces that are taking us toward thriving, and the pieces that are more about self-protection and survival mode, usually. And there's kind of an inner and an outer aspect to it as well. There's this piece about sense making, our making sense. Remember that diagram for earlier, that we're constantly receiving the world and making sense of it, but we're also constantly choosing and reacting to our, or responding, I should say, to our world. So we find it's very, very helpful to be able to create a space for ourselves to reflect upon, how am I sensing the world, both the part of myself that's about thriving and the part of myself that's about self-protection and survival, and also how am I responding to the world. And then these other questions are kind of what we do with the whole of this matrix tool, and how we turn it into action. So we'll get to that later. So at this point, we're going to be down in this bottom right quadrant. And what I'd like to do is invite you to take a moment to just settle into an awareness of this general domain that you've chosen, and see if you can reframe it as a commitment to something. This is something you're committed and striving to do. It will be most helpful for you if this, and I'll put these up, I'm going to show you a couple of examples and then I'll come back and leave these up on the screen. But if it's important for you, this commitment, it will make a difference to others, that it's something that you can affect, that implicates you, something that you can control to some degree, and there's room for improvement, and that it's framed in the positive. That is, it's not about what you don't want, it's about what you do want. So to give you some examples of the sorts of things we're talking about, like to invite you to Michelle, if I may, what can you speak a little bit to what you are committed and striving to, given your intention?
Yeah, it's good to actually focus on that, and something that we have aspiration to do. And it was good to think about reducing my desire of controlling things and allow my inner and collective wisdom to actually emerge in every single space, to actually let the best solutions to come from the field in each moment, in each project, in my life and my professional life. So I can actually feel the presence of each single moment instead of thinking about what is right and wrong all the time. Yeah,
thank you. And Robert?
Yeah, and for me, it was just about maintaining a humble presence when in the midst of negotiating collaborative endeavors, so that, you know, what's intrinsically important to everybody is fully embraced, you know, so that we all really get each other, so we can actually be in the service of each other's life.
Mm. So just take a moment, if you will, to hopefully, oh, sorry, I said I was going to put these up. Just take a moment, if you can, to brainstorm what your hope might be in terms of a commitment. You're committed to something. And then we'll pause and just check in and make sure that everyone's got something. So I'd love to get a sense of maybe if a couple of people would be willing to share the sorts of things you're coming up with, or if you have any questions. Would anyone be willing to share what they're committing to at this point? Yeah, Lena, was that Lena? Yeah,
Yes.
Lena.
Okay, so the first thing that I wrote is that I think that if I pay more attention and I am more present in the conversations, the quality of my relationships could improve.
Mm.
Then I how is it in English? I am committed and strive to pay more attention to the others, understand or try to understand what they really want to say and what that implies in their lives.
Mm.
And at the end, yeah, be more present in the conversations and remember also the conversations that I'm having with the persons, with people. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lena. That's really clear. If anyone would like to just speak in Spanish is fine too, and it'll be translated for me. So whichever language you like, you can choose. Thank you. Maybe we could have one other. Maria Paula.
Sí, bueno, yo puse que me comprometo y me esfuerzo por escuchar para comprender y no para responder. O sea, siento que además de esto, permitirme como un crecimiento personal en la medida en la que puedo como reconstruir las ideas que tengo, pues también me permite como que aportar al mundo de que podemos como construir a través de la diferencia, ¿no? Entonces estaba pensando como por ese lado, lo personal, y cómo eso también me ayuda a construir pues un mundo mejor.
Thank you. That's also very, very clear. Committing to understanding perspective of the other. Have I understood that correctly? Yeah. Thank you. So you've actually, both Lena and Maria have started to answer this question already, but the next question is in the top right of the matrix part. We're interested in just learning a little bit more about why this commitment matters to you or to your team. And you'll notice perhaps that actually, sorry, let me just back up a little bit. I just realized I kind of skipped a step. I just want to check and make sure, does everybody feel in the group that you have something you're committed to that really matters to you, that you can do something about? It implicates you. There's some room for improvement. You're not already perfect at it. and it's framed in the positive. There's something that you want rather than just what you don't want. I just want to make sure that, because if you don't have those things in place, the rest of the exercise doesn't work so well. So could I have a thumbs up from everyone who feels like you're ready to go? Yep. And thank you. If you're off video, you can stay off video and just put your thumb up using the reactions button if you prefer. Thank you. Looks like everyone's good to go. So for quadrant 2, our top right here, I just wanted to invite you into reflecting on why this really matters. It could be because of the goals you're trying to achieve, certain outcomes. It could be because of how you want to be in the world. That's what I would call values, the qualities of my behavior. So in my case, I really want to be saying no more often to projects that are not aligned with what really matters to me. My aim is to be excellent in the work that I am focusing on, and to be really, so I have values around excellence, but also calm. And my needs, or it could be in terms of needs, you know, needs for space and connection. It doesn't really matter, but why does it matter to you and your team? And so again, I'll pick on Michelle and Robert as kind of guinea pigs for Michelle. Could you go first? Of why does your commitment really matter?
Keeping my inner peace, I can be a better partner in my projects, and I can embrace more new significant projects that I've been invited. So I don't need to reduce this amount of time, because I can be present and trust, and it's not the amount of volume of projects and tasks that is going to take me out of my balance. And this is possible to focus and have. And feeling an inner balance and courage, it's going to be important to face the unknown ahead, because I need to work better with uncertainty and let whatever needs to be solved and merge in each moment.
Wonderful, thank you. And Robert, would you like to just briefly say a couple of words about your response there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really important to me. I think that the more we can really become empathetic to the needs and values of another, like really get the other person, then it'll develop trust. You know, deep human connection can form, and community can grow, and which actually is I think is the glue for real collaboration, so that real value can be realized together. You know, and I think this is just so important in today's world, given how conflicted and challenged we are, how much conflict is in the world.
Wonderful, thank you. And so we're going to have another period of reflection. And I invite you in these processes of reflection to not just sense it in your head, but if you we're going to take a few minutes here. So take a few minutes just to also sense in your body what really matters here about this commitment to you. Maybe even sensing into times when you've exhibited or not exhibited these qualities. So I'm going to move on, and because there will be opportunities for you to elaborate on what you've written. What I'd like to do now is invite you to, we're going to be breaking into pairs and inviting you just to share with one other person what you've come up with so far. And I'd love to invite you to do that in a particular way. We'll take about 16 minutes for this, Anna, please, not 20. And here is the particular way that I'm going to invite you to do it. You've already had an opportunity, hopefully, to introduce yourselves, so you may be able to skip that. But what I would like you to do is to go into deciding who's going to speak first. That person we're going to call person A. And then we'll give you prompts for all of this we'll prompt you as you go through the breakout. But we're going to spend the first 4 minutes, person A, sharing what you choose to share about the work you've done so far. and take the time to flesh out why it matters to you. You've got 4 whole minutes of being listened to. And I'd like for person B, the listener, to be listening really carefully, and particularly for values and emotions. Preferably, you shouldn't need to write things down or ask questions. Just see if you can just be present and really listen. Of course, if you want to write things down, that's fine too. We're not going to be policing it, but it's an opportunity to kind of practice just being really present to someone and listening for values and emotions. And then we'll send a little note saying, person B, please reflect back. And in that time, for a couple of minutes, I'm going to invite person B to reflect back as much as you can of what you've heard about the values and emotions and what matters to the person, basically, what matters. Person A is just listening, and then we'll have a minute or so for you to finish up and for person A to add anything or change anything that was misunderstood. So it sounds a little bit complex, I know, and I'm not saying this is how you should always listen to people. It's not obviously we don't do this in this way in natural speech, but I'm inviting you to experiment with it and being quite structured, because in this structuring, people often discover new things about how they can be with people. So is it clear what the instructions are? And I guess I could put that all in the chat, in which case, but I will guide you through it as well. So don't be worried about remembering at all. Okay. So let's do it. Anna, would you mind putting people into breakouts? And I would prefer not, oh, now that's, okay, I'll go into a breakout with Henry. That's fine.
Okay.
So we'll take a break in a moment, but I'd love to just hear from maybe a couple of people what that was like to share. I'm particularly interested in hearing a little bit about what it was like to be listened to really carefully, and what it was like to be the listener. So would anyone be willing to share a little bit about how that was for you? Yes, Josepha.
I think for me, I was with Mariana do Prado, who's also a university, also works at the university. And although you're in different fields, it was also like, to a certain extent, listening to myself. So it was really interesting because we were really aligned in terms of some of the needs that we are striving to prioritize in our lives. So it was interesting, actually, to see how, and actually one minor point that we reflected at the end is how rarely we have this time to do the intentional inner work in the field that we are, like, as faculty in universities. We have a very performatic, we always need to be there for others, teaching, knowing the right answers, and seldom to reflect upon where we are, where we want to be, who we are as human beings. So it was really interesting to listen that's something like that we still try to prioritize our human side.
Thank you so much. Yes, so first of all, the commonality of your needs and values and connecting with someone, and then that piece about appreciation and gratitude for having the space to do that. Thank you. Maybe someone else. I'd love a little reflection on if there was anything that was inviting you to listen in a particular way there too. And any reflections on what that was like for you? Marcelo?
Vou falar em português, tudo bem? Eu fiz com o Marconi o processo e foi bem interessante como que eu me conectei com não só com o lado cognitivo, também emoções e os valores. Eu achei muito interessante essa oportunidade, né, de me escutar, escutando o Marconi. Tem vários níveis de escuta e como que é interessante poder um dos circuitos e legal o outro também, e o outro. Foi muito bom. Interessante a prática.
Thank you, Marcelo. Maybe one other before we go to a break. Any other, Lena? Or no, actually Marconi and then Lena. Marconi, you might want to respond to Marcelo.
Gracias, voy a hablar en español, creo que se escucha todo bien. No, solamente un pequeño aporte. Bueno, dos elementos. El primero, muchas veces nosotros subestimamos el poder que tienen las conversaciones. Creo que ese es uno de los puntos más importantes para establecer un vínculo, el poder de la conversación. ¿De qué manera o qué tipo de conversaciones tenemos? En este caso con Marcelo fue muy interesante. Y el segundo punto es cómo hablando con las personas podemos entender de que somos más similares, mucho más parecidos y tenemos muchas cosas en común. Escuchando a Marcelo, también había muchas cosas que yo tengo en común y no pareciera por la cultura, ya sea por muchos factores, pero el conocer a las personas nos permite también entender de que estamos más cerca que nunca, ¿verdad? En todos estos aspectos y con todos ustedes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marconi. And Lena.
Sí, voy a hablar en español también. Bueno, de hecho es algo similar a lo que decía Marconi y Josafa. También me di cuenta que a nivel de valores uno puede tener muchas similitudes con otra persona a pesar de estar hablando de dos cosas diferentes. Y eso me pareció bastante interesante. Como hay unos sistemas de valores que pueden ser similares y me ponía a pensar, bueno, tal vez eso lo conecta a uno con ciertas personas más que con otras. Ese sistema de valores del que uno normalmente nunca se pregunta, porque pues no estaba hablando de un tema específico. Y por otro lado, a mí me costó bastante identificar las emociones, la emoción de Paula. Y hablábamos con Paula de eso y tal vez pues una de las cosas que impide un poco que sea o que lo hace más difícil es que pues el hecho de que estamos viendo no solo este pedazo, ¿no? de nuestro cuerpo, porque tal vez a través de vernos las manos, los brazos, cómo nos movemos, podríamos identificar mejor las emociones.
Thank you so much. One thing I want to draw your attention to is, all of you, is the sense of connection you're pointing to, both in terms of similarity, but if you think for a moment about what creates that connection, it's something that you created together, both by speaking openly and being vulnerable, and also by listening carefully, really honoring the person by listening to what mattered to them and what they felt. And so that is a system that you're building that takes two sides, and you can create more connection with people by choosing to be more vulnerable and by listening more carefully. Even if they're not doing those things, they will pick up on it over time. But you can also tell them, this is what I'm doing. So even though you won't do it in that particular way, that very sort of structured way, I'm hoping that you're taking something from that experience of really slowing down and getting out of our own, what I'm going to say next, and paying attention to the other. All right, let's take a break for 10 minutes and come back at 20 minutes to the hour, please. All right, see you soon. And during that time, maybe if there's anyone who's arrived late who needs to catch up, I know Sonia's in that position, but if there's anyone else, just let us know, and we can have someone can take you to a breakout room and help you. Thank you.
Sonia.
And is it
that's-
okay? Good.
Welcome back. All right, so we're going to carry on our journey through this matrix tool, and the next quadrant is quadrant 3, and in this quadrant we're going to be exploring this surviving side, if you like, moving over to the other side of the matrix, which is usually more about self-protection. And so I'm going to invite you to put down in the bottom left of this matrix what you're doing or not doing that works against your commitment that you put down in the bottom right. And so there should be behaviours that work against the commitment. It's not about why you're doing it, it's about what you're doing that's working against it. So just to give you an example of the sort of thing we have in mind, Michelle, would you like to share? You might recall that Michelle was working on releasing desire to control and surrendering in order to build more inner peace. And what are you doing instead, Michelle, if you can share with us?
Usually when I'm in that mode, actually, I turn on my project manager mode.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to know and control everything and overloading people with activities. So usually my commitment instead is to realize and assert and slow down and get into my inner balance in a way that I know that this is an aspect that is taking me out of root. So I take responsibility of having my practice, my meditation, but usually when I see that, it's what happens.
Yeah, okay. So you can get into that project manager mode. Yeah, thank you. And Robert, what about you? What happens instead? And I should just, I mean, I know you know this because we're all dear friends, but obviously what we're offering up here is not bad or wrong. It's ideally if we can hold this as one aspect of ourselves that, as we'll see in a moment, serves certain purposes. So Robert, what do you find yourself doing instead of what you're committed to?
Yeah, certainly. So the thing that I'm committed to is just trying to maintain a humble and empathetic present toward others, you know, in order to develop deep trust. But what happens to me is when what's deeply and intrinsically important to me seems to be overlooked, and I feel like I'm not being heard, I tend to actually then just speak up a lot. You know, I get louder and I become quite assertive, and I certainly don't slow down. And my capacity to listen to others and catch what they really need and and value kind of evaporates. Really, it's really diminished. I just get hooked by wanting to say what it is that's important to me and feel heard myself.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that term, hooked, and kind of drawn into it almost in a reactive way. So just give you all a few minutes to reflect, and I can turn the screen share off if you'd like to share music, Michelle or Anna. Just we can take a couple of minutes with this, and I invite you to put down in that bottom left, what is it that you're actually doing instead of that commitment that you wrote down on the right-hand side? Okay, lovely. All right, thank you. I just learned something about process here. I think what I'll do next time is I'll ask people to put your hand up with the reaction button, and they'll stay there. And then I'll know when you're finished, which will work. So thank you for teaching me that. I'm going to try also without the slides so we can keep a bit of connection here. We're going to move now to the top left. And this is where we have an opportunity to really explore what's going on inside us that is driving that behavior in the bottom left. And so a way into that, first of all, is to just, if you look at what you've just written and imagine yourself not doing those things. This gets a bit complicated, but I think I'll use Michelle's example to illustrate. You look at what you've written in the bottom left and imagine yourself not doing those things. What shows up for you? What's the most uncomfortable or worrying or scary feeling that comes up for you? So if I give you an example, with Michelle's example, Michelle, do you mind if I just speak to your example for a moment and then you can correct me if I'm wrong? Michelle shared with us very kindly that she goes into project management mode when she's instead of the intention that she has, which is to release and surrender. Now, what is the concern that's driving that? Michelle, would you like to share a little bit about that? The concern, and then also what you might also be committed to.
Let me see if I remember. I'm just trying to get all this information on the chat. But there are so many things that takes me out of this place. And I know this is very hard to say because this is usually based on my beliefs of Japanese descendant and family. Usually I'm concerned about keeping honor and quality because there's no space to fail in my ancestral culture. So usually I'm committed to taking responsibility for doing everything the best. It's a way to honor my Japanese ancestors, and everything that must be well done. So anytime that I decided to release and I have a fear of losing control and not keeping this ancestral ownership, I kind of get into this controlling mode and I keep myself on fear, and that's what usually happens. It's a feeling that if I have something that I decided to do it doesn't go right, that I should kind of not leave anymore, because this is a feeling that sometimes it takes me on a place that I cannot fail, not to be perfect in everything that I do.
Thank you. I just want to honor you, Michelle, for sharing with us that part of yourself of when you're noticing that this project management mode that you talked about earlier shows up out of a space of having a kind of a competing commitment, a kind of another part of yourself that is really about doing everything as best as possible, that everything must be well done and maintain honor and quality. Thank you. And Robert, would you be willing to share what shows up for you in terms of concern and commitment?
Yes, certainly. It's when while I might be committed to kind of maintaining a humble and empathetic presence to others, what happens is when I feel when I feel that what is deeply important to me is being overlooked or ignored or dismissed, there's this rising in me, and I actually start speaking much more than listening. And underneath that is this concern that if what's important to me is overlooked and I'm not heard, then in some way I actually become irrelevant. And so there's this kind of other commitment to being heard and understood and valued for who I am, and to belong and to be able to make a difference, and not to be just seen as someone who's irrelevant.
Thank you. And so those things that we're entering in quadrant 4, there'll usually be a concern that shows up for you if you don't do that behavior in the bottom left. And then you might reframe that as a commitment. And usually it's a commitment to self-protection. Usually there's some fear involved in this side. And what you're putting up in the top left kind of explains why you do what's in the bottom left. And you'll know you've got it when it feels sort of powerful. It's like an 8 or a 10 out of 10 in terms of something that really matters to you. So once again, thank you both to Michelle and Robert for sharing so openly in this context. And I just invite you to take a moment to feel into your own response here. What would concern you if you didn't do what it says in the bottom left? And what might that mean you're also committed to, in addition to your commitment that you wrote on the right-hand side? I'm going to assume that Marconi and Mariana are ready to move on, I think, because I can't see you. I'm not sure if you're there. Okay, thank you. So you could lower your hands again. The last piece of this, if we could turn the music off, it'd be great, please. The last piece of this, well, there's 2 bits left that, and this is perhaps the most important move. Inviting you to kind of look at what holds all of this together as a system within you. If you start to look at these 2 pieces of yourself, and they're both equally valid and important. The piece on the right is usually about reaching out and connecting with others. It's about something greater than yourself. And the piece on the left is usually about self-protection and protecting your own organism. And those things both always matter. They both deserve to be in the world, but they may not serve you equally well. It may be that at this point in your life, the right-hand side serves you better. And so the next move is about assumptions that underpin those 2 pieces. And you'll usually notice a couple of assumptions here. You'll notice an assumption that underpins the thriving about how that might help you in the world. There's a kind of if-then move that you can make. And I'll give you an example in a moment with Michelle and Robert's examples. But there'll also be an assumption about what could go wrong on the left-hand side that underpins that. So Michelle, I could just invite you to share what showed up for you when you started reflecting on the assumptions underpinning both your toward move and your self-survival, self-protection move?
I'm assuming that by surrendering, I will access a channel of wisdom to better promote the actions I need to evolve as a human being, and to find the best solutions for each step of my personal and professional aspirations and projects. I'm assuming that if I don't have a plan, I won't be able to do the best that I can. And if I dishonor my family, I do not deserve to exist. So I have both assumptions that takes me to both sides of the matrix at the same time. And this is what actually some of my perspectives and assumptions during the exercise I could access, because beforehand it was not clear, right? I think this is one of the things that took me the time and is very valuable, is actually to have the time to access on that, because it was not easy at the first moment, but after I keep on going, making the question, I could access those assumptions that I have.
So when we were doing that together, this was quite a moment too. I mean, I think Michelle first shared, if I may say, Michelle, I hope you don't mind, but it was how we got to this point. You've already shared the most vulnerably, so I'm assuming it's not a problem. But your first response was something like, I'm assuming that if I don't do this, I will fail. And I said, and what would happen if you failed? And then you took that next extra step of, I would dishonor my ancestors, and what would happen if you dishonored your ancestors? Like, then what? Well, then I don't deserve to exist. And I mean, that moment was profound for me, and I think for you as well. So allow yourself here now. In a way, Michelle knows that that belief is not real. It's not like this is something that consciously drives her behavior, but allow yourself to express it in those extreme terms. You know, let yourself go with that. Like, if this was to happen, then what? Because it gives you an insight into the kind of pattern that might be underpinning. I mean, it's helpful usually for people to express it in extreme terms. It often ends up in a place of, you know, I'll die, or I don't deserve to exist, or something like that. So Robert, would you share your example if you'd be willing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, these are interesting reflections, aren't they? It's in relation to yeah, what I want to do in terms of cultivating relationships that thrive, and, you know, being empathetic to others. I'm assuming that if we are truly present to each other and respond consciously, we'll actually be in the service of life, the life of our planet, the life of each other, and the life of future generations. But in terms of what I do when I feel as though what's important to me is being overlooked, I'm assuming that, first of all, I'm assuming that I understand what others think about me and my ideas without actually checking with them. But I also assume that if my value is not recognized, then I'll become irrelevant. And drilling inside of that, I'm assuming that the relationships that I'm in, there's just winners and losers. It's a zero-sum game. And that at the end of the day, I'll be the loser.
Thank you, Robert. And so that kind of idea of competition and scarcity is one that has permeated our culture, that there's winners and losers. And thank you, Robert, for sharing how that shows up. So we'll just take a moment now for you to reflect for yourself, and then we'll share as a larger group. What sorts of assumptions can you see underpinning your matrix? both the right-hand side and the left-hand side. And you can think of this as a kind of self-rule almost about, if I do this, then this will happen. That's usually the form that it takes. We'll take a few minutes to settle into that. Okay. Thank you. You could lower your hands again now. So the remainder of this exercise is to explore what you're committing to in terms of action for this program. And I'm going to leave that to you to reflect upon. But in the 10 minutes or so that I have just now, before we wrap up for today, I wonder if anyone would be willing to share in the plenary, in a big group, what showed up for you, or if you have any questions, because I realize these last couple of pieces are perhaps a little counterintuitive. Would anyone be willing to share something of what they've come up with? Or do you have any questions? Lena.
So, I'm assuming that through the creation of strong, significant, and profound relationships, there is a possibility to create new things and good things that might have a great positive impact in society. Because there is the willingness to understand the other persons and therefore to build something together. But I'm also assuming that if I pay too much attention, or if I'm just giving all of my effort, maybe I can get hurt at the end. And if I don't connect to others, then I can be alone forever.
So there's there's that piece there of, on the one hand, a belief that this connection can lead to great richness and collaboration. And on the other hand, this piece of, if I do connect, or to the extent that I connect and I'm open and vulnerable, I could be really hurt. And can I just ask you, Lena, and if you were hurt, then what?
If I'm hurt, then I don't know.
Yeah, could maybe be so painful you retreat and become alone. Was with the other piece of what you offered was, you know, I think
Like
related.
alone, yeah. I mean, if I'm hurt, then maybe I'm afraid to keep all these strong but bad feelings in myself, like
Yeah,
to
they
feel,
might become overwhelming.
yeah,
Those feelings, so overwhelming. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for sharing, Lena. It really just enriches the space for all of us, for you to share that. Thank you. Would anyone else be willing to share a little bit of what showed up for you on that left-hand side and the assumption? It's harder to do in a bigger group, isn't it? I just call up my own personal example. You might recall that I was sharing about my commitment was to only say yes to things that met certain criteria, like making good use of my skills and things that really mattered and improving quality of trust. And when I followed that through on this matrix, I realized that my competing commitment was, you know, I was saying yes to a lot of things that I didn't really need to be involved in. And I realized that a big part of that was about a concern about missing out if I, you know, fear of missing out, but also wanting to be involved in every aspect of pro-social world and feeling like if I didn't do that, then I'd become less prominent and less able to make an income to support myself and my family. And my assumption really that struck me when I thought about it, there's obviously positive assumptions about if I choose my direction more carefully, then I'll live a more fulfilling life. But on the self-protection side, it came to me quite strongly that I assume that nobody else cares for me enough to actually include me, even if I'm not physically present in the conversation. So I noticed myself assuming that I had to insert myself into as many conversations as possible because other people would not care for me and care to cover my back, as it were. I'm not sure what the correct expression for that is. And I'll just share that it's actually, I know that's not true because, for example, Michelle, Marcelo and Robert are extremely caring about me even when I'm not present in the conversation. But it was really powerful to me to just realize there's this younger part of myself that is still operating out of the space that unless I make myself visible, other people won't care enough about me to ensure that I'm looked after. So this work can shed light on these different pieces of ourselves. Increasingly, I'm seeing this as the younger parts of ourselves in competition in some ways with more mature parts of ourselves. And the psychological flexibility piece of this is to begin to bring awareness and perspective to the sensing of all of this going on, and then responding with self-compassion to those different parts of ourselves, to holding ourselves with some self-compassion, so that we're not lost in negative self-judgment, which ultimately just sustains these assumptions. So I'll share with you one last slide and then I'll hand back to Robert. At the beginning of this presentation, I pointed to the aims of pro-social are about balancing and integrating interests across levels And today we've focused on the within you level, balancing and integrating these different parts. And also a little bit, we only had one term for a breakout with listening to the other. But in that process, I invited you to really focus on listening for values and emotions. And that is the first step in really sensing and responding into balancing and integrating interests with another. So that's what brings all of this session together. And I'm going to pass over to Robert now to just talk a little bit more about how this work might fit within the program and perhaps buddying up. So thank you all very much. I hope that's been helpful, and over to you, Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
I'll stop sharing, sorry.
Yeah. Shall we give Paul a show of appreciation? I mean, thanks, Paul. I think this is the beginning of what I'm hoping will be a really powerful and ongoing conversation within. So I wonder, just before I do pick up on this, would you all like to just put a comment, just a word in the chat about how you're feeling about the conversation we've just had now? Reflective, challenged. I'll need some help, Michelle, to translate some of those words.
Yes, okay. Reflective,
Gratitude.
understood, powerful, challenged, represented, reflective, motivated, engaged.
Yeah.
Strengthened with compassion.
Yeah, beautiful. It's this, I hope you got a sense of that, how powerful this conversation is. And the way in which Paul structured it, you can actually just do it as an ordinary conversation. Now, each of those questions that are in the quadrants, you could ask someone those questions as you're walking through the forest. You know, if there's one thing that you really cared about that would make a big difference for you and others, what would you like to do? Oh, wow, why is that so important? Gosh, what do you end up finding yourself doing instead of that? Gee, it sounds like you're assuming that if you really act on what's important to you, you're going to have a wonderful life. But also, if you do this other thing, everything's going to fall apart and you're not going to survive. You know, and actually, we've got a choice. We've got a choice, which is the last question that we didn't get to, which I really want you to actually go to. We've got a choice to actually love each other no matter what, which is kind of what I'm choosing, even when the going gets really tough. But just to give you a, well, actually, before I go into the whole program, I'm going to drop the resources that for today's session in the chat in case you didn't get them. But also, all of these resources are available in a Dropbox folder. And the link's there. All of this is in an email that I sent yesterday, and I know that Michelle will probably follow up on WhatsApp. But Paul and I have tried to write this guide. If you had a look at it, you know, the Cycle to Self-Development Guide, as a as going to be the first chapter in a field book. So by the end of this program, you're all going to have a field book that will enable you to facilitate exactly the same conversation with your people. And so we hope this is very accessible. We translated them yesterday using Google Translate into Spanish and Portuguese. So we hope that the translations actually make sense. But we encourage you to actually go, well, first two things: find a buddy, someone that you would like to actually continue having this conversation with for the duration of our time together. And to actually take time out. You know, as Josifa, you said before, that, you know, we rarely take time out to have this conversation for each other. And it's quite extraordinary. Yeah, this many don't do this. I mean, Sonia and I were touching on the same point when we spoke. And so what I invite you to do is find a buddy and choose some time each couple of weeks to actually have a version of this conversation and to reinforce what it is you want to actively choose to act in a direction that's going to give you vitality within the context of important relationships. And please share these resources. In terms of the program itself, let me just share a screen. So we're here, cycle 2. And in a fortnight's time, we're going to have a very similar conversation about these critical and uncertain factors that we've already named in a previous conversation. But this conversation will be about how are they actually playing out within your own communities or organizations. And we'll be taking the self-development conversation to another level. So this is about asking, what can I do as an individual to act in a direction that's going to give me vitality? This next conversation will be the beginning of what can we do to act as a community, as a group, to act in a direction that's going to give us vitality. And so this is about naming the critical factors that we need to respond to, and then we'll do an analysis of those in a month's time. And then we'll do a deep dive into what it takes to actually build a culture that is really, it's pro-social. There's a lot of trust and reciprocity. So that's where we are in the journey. In the email yesterday, I also asked you to nominate a couple of people from your organizations to join this series of sessions on participatory video, but also to send us a quote on some equipment that you'll need to be able to do this journey. So please take a look at that. There's an online enrollment form where you can enroll your people. And I've asked that you send back the quote. You enroll and send the quote back within a couple of weeks so it can get organized. There's also a message about a meeting with those who are actually interested in formal research. So I know that Josifa and Sonia and others actually will be. I know Maria Paula, you are. So David and Paul particularly want to form a small community where we actually form shape up a collaborative research agenda, an agreement about how we're going to work together. And so that's all. There's a doodle poll inviting you to pick a date for that conversation with Paul and David and myself to actually craft this agenda, because it, as well as capturing well-documented video stories of change, that'd be lovely if we work together to actually publish, you know, and to prepare documents and reports that will actually enable you to further your own work within the context of universities and your professional communities. So please look out, please take a look at that. But the last thing I want to draw your attention to, when I was talking to Sonia before, I was reminded of a blog that has just been published, inspired by the conversations that I've been having with Paul, particularly, that have led to this kind of work that we're doing today. And it's a prelude to a book that he's about to publish as well. So I've just popped that into the chat if you'd like to read it, because it speaks to the nature of the inner and the outer work that we're going to, and that we're hoping to actually cultivate and facilitate through this process. So thank you everyone for coming today. It's I really hope you've derived value out of it, and you take this conversation forward. I'd love to come online in a fortnight's time and hear some stories about how you actually had this conversation with someone. Okay.
There's just
Thanks,
one
Christian.
thing. If everyone will have just a couple of minutes, it's okay. Sonia had offered a very good experience and for us to talk about the gratitude aspect, and at the same time we can have this time. Sonia, is it okay for you?
Yeah, so just Sonia, just before you pick it up, Paul's just reminded me, like the buddying. Maybe I didn't reinforce that enough. What we're hoping to do is that you'll choose a buddy that you'll work with for the whole program in order to have this self-development conversation. So please choose someone that would be prepared to be your buddy till the end of the year. Someone that you would be prepared to actually go and have coffees with, or go for walks in forests with, or even Zoom with if you have to have exactly this conversation about you and what you would like to do in order to live a thriving life. Can you do that?
We'll try.
Okay. Thanks. Over to you.
We'll help support that.
Yeah. So Sonia, your gratitude.
I'm willing, Michelle. It's going to take only 5 minutes if everyone is willing to stay 5 more minutes.
Is it okay, everyone? So we can stay 5 minutes to practice gratitude? Okay. Thank you, Sonia. I'll share the screen for you.
All right, thank you. This is not going to be as nice as Robert playing the guitar, but we can practice gratitude anyway. I just want to remind that, or maybe say, because you don't know, that our program, the program that we designed as part of the TWCF project, was the design of a program to promote gratitude with children. So I took one of the activities that we do in our program with 5th graders, and I brought it today, an adaptation of that, for us just to have a sense of what we do with little kids. And kids just love this activity. It's beautiful in our workbook, but I just draw some slides for us to practice. If we can go to the next, Michelle, please.
Ana, consegue passar o slide, fazendo favor?
The next one, yes.
Maybe it's locked. Ana? Oops.
Yes, Michelle?
Você pode passar para o próximo slide, fazendo favor?
Desculpa, você pode repetir?
Você pode passar para o próximo slide?
Esse?
É uma apresentação, né? Você consegue passar para o próximo slide?
Não está passando para vocês?
Não.
Ah.
Sorry, Sonia.
Is it working now?
No, it's not, but I can share it well, I don't know if I can share this screen.
I'll try it from here.
You should be able to.
Okay. Is it going? So let's see.
All right. So the first thing is very quick, and I'm just honoring this beautiful group, diverse group, multiculturally from every place in the world, just to say thanks. So I call it saying thanks around the world. If you pass it to the next, Michelle, please. This is an exercise that we did with the kids. So on the left side, we just brought them a map with the words to say thanks in different parts of the world, in different countries, in different languages. So I brought 3 that are our common languages here. So how do we say thank you in the United States? How do we say thank you in Brazil? And how do we say thanks in Colombia, in a specific region from Colombia where my mom was born, which is La Guajira, is the Atlantic coast. So in the United States, they say thank you. In Brazil, obrigado. And in Colombia is a native community, and they said it's very hard to pronounce, Anayahuachica. Anayahuachica is the way native people from La Guajira say thanks. I would like for you to just, if you know a word to say thank you from any part of the world, if you can share it with us very quickly. From any country, you can say it with the microphone. It will be nice to hear it. I know that you are writing in the chat. Merci, grazie, danke, arigato from Japan. Can you pass it to the next, Michelle, please? We have Europe, we have Asia. Efaristo. Oh, you are in Greece, Josafa, so you are very familiar with the way you can say thank you in Greek. Thanks. So this is just a way we did it with our children, and they just love the words, they just love the sounds, and it's just a beautiful world of thanks. Can we pass it to the next? And the exercise is a gratitude experience, and these are the instructions. And it's an exercise from Colombia. That's why I put our map with the colors of our flag. So I want you to select a significant person close to you. If you want to identify this person, you can do it. If not, that's okay. In the green line in the next slide. And I want you to think about a gratitude experience. Why would you like to say thank or to express thank you in any way to this person? Can we move to the next one? So in these boxes that I just color yellow, blue, and red as our Colombian flag, because this is a Colombian exercise, I would like you to fill these boxes. What nice thing did this person do for me? A beautiful thing. It doesn't have to be a present. It's better if it's not a physical present. This is the first. If you can think, it's not to write, just to think. What nice thing did this person do for me? And then how much effort this person put in that nice action, because usually when we get something from nice people, that means effort, intentions, beautiful things. And the final box is, how can I thank this person for the nice action? And I would like for you to be creative. Just think about ways to express thanks to somebody for something beautiful he or she did for you. And if somebody would like to share this little gratitude experience in the microphone, it will be nice. Paul, can you say it in the microphone?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I just wanted to acknowledge Robert, who very kind, he wrote that blog that he shared just a little bit earlier, but he shared it with great generosity as a co-creation with me, which I really appreciated. So thank you, mate.
Somebody else would like to share the way, I mean, something that somebody did for you, that it was nice, beautiful, generous, that you appreciate, and you would like to express thanks in any way?
Have a friend, a German friend, and she was the first person who was really patient with me, and when I was learning German, so it was not that easy, but she was really patient and always correct me, but in a really good way. So yeah, and the way I responded, I mean, it was like basically responded with my friendship somehow. So yeah.
That's very beautiful. Thank you, Lina. One more experience that somebody would like to share?
There's so many, but I would like to thank you, Sonia, for bringing a little piece of Colombia for us, bringing this piece of activity and experience that is being shared with so many kids in Colombia, giving them this opportunity to feel and practice gratitude since they're so young, and also to grow and spread out to us, bringing the colors of Colombia, which this project, and especially there's so many that we have to learn from the sign to have so many organizations and people from Colombia, and sharing from this positive side of feeling gratitude and teaching for so many kids. So thank you so much. Gratitude for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you. The invitation is just, as Robert was saying earlier, just to pay attention to those little things that we receive every day from so many important people, beautiful people close to us, and express thanks in a way that is more than just say thank you. And if you can create a beautiful way to express thanks, this person is gonna love it, and this relationship is gonna flourish for sure. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone. I have so much appreciation and gratitude to so many people who's in this room until now, that is hard to just give to one person. So gratitude, and thank you so much for everyone to stay to this moment. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming and sharing a very big part of your wisdom to us in a very simple and didactic, like very easy for us to understand, because I know this is really hard for us to go through it. But thank you and much appreciation for bringing all this content. Also for Robert and Marcelo, who's been partnering and bringing out this opportunity to Latin America and holding this space so we can keep this journey with all of you and all this organization. And for sure, always thanking for the tech hosts like Anna and the translators who's bringing us and building all these bridges so we can share these documents and all this content that is being developed and prepared from all of us. So thank you so much. And then we see you in 2 weeks. There's so many things coming. And yes, oh, I also cooked arepas for my friend. This is so good. We can make a choreography. At this time, I think no good to talk about food now, but it's a great opportunity as well. So thank you so much, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Michelle.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sonia.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.